When this boy meets world, when this boy meets world.
What up, bros?
What up, bros?
And welcome to Bruh Meets World.
When it's Bro Meets World.
Your Boy Meets World fan cast. Welcome to episode 44. I'm Siege.
I'm Tonathy Curtis in the building.
What's up, Jonathan?
Chillin'.
All right. So, anything you want to start off with, or anything?
Trans rights are human rights.
Trans rights are human rights. Yeah, let's definitely start there. There's a lot going on just in the world. We're recording this right now after the Dwight Howard thread. If you don't know about that.
You just schooled me on it because
Yeah.
I've been a little busy with my move to LA. But wow, yeah, guys.
Yeah.
Trans rights are human rights.
Yeah, honestly, why is that so hard to comprehend?
You know what? To understand that they're, like, for every person you see as a human being, you would think that this would be elementary.
It seems like the easiest thing to get around.
But, like, if they look a little different or if they fuck a little different, they're just not even people.
It's so upsetting to me. This is literally kind of like just a side thing, but like there's so many times where it's like, it doesn't even involve you.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do
Not
with
even a
you.
little bit.
No one's asking you to do anything. The other day I was talking to friends. We were on Thanksgiving. We were talking about the fact that, like, girls who come into the men's restroom, like, when they have to pee.
Yeah.
And for the most part, no one cares. Just fucking pee. And, like, that's what the main thing, the main goal usually is to pee.
You know what's a shame? When I was road tripping, I was at a restaurant and there was a line for the men's room and the women's room was empty and I wanted to go in there and I was just like, fuck, I'm going to get shit for this.
Because you were doing, I don't know what part of the country that's probably.
It was Texas.
I would say, so because of that, I think you made the right choice.
Yeah.
But at the exact same time, very often, I've just done it.
A vacant bathroom's a vacant
bathroom is a vacant bathroom.
Yeah.
And yet, for so many people, that means something. And the thing I like about living in LA is most bathrooms will be like, just pee. It'll have the man and the woman, or like every bathroom's a family bathroom.
Sure.
Just go.
Yeah.
That's what's important. And it's just, it always frustrates me that people can't understand to just let someone else do their whole day. Yeah, exactly. So, on that note,
other than that, this was a very interesting episode.
This is an interesting episode. Also, I had just watched Creed 2. So
there's a lot of
there's
that going on in the back of your head. Okay.
And by that, I will also say, like, this whole masculine defending of my, like, it's all nonsense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
know.
there was definitely a few moments in this episode where I was just like, what are they promoting exactly? Specifically, a scene where they're chugging soda in the cafeteria.
And you're like, that's not soda. But yeah. Okay, so let's just get into it. This is, let's do the Tell Me About It.
Yeah, let's jump in. Tell me about it.
There you go. This is season 2, episode 21, Thrilla and Philla. Cory is trying to make a name for himself again when he gets drafted for the wrestling team. Once on the team, he behaves in a way that neither Sean nor Topanga approve. That is until he's challenged for his spot by Joey the Rat, who is also looking to find himself. When Cory wins the wrestling match at school, Joey challenges him to a rematch after school, this time no rules.
The rematch is the most ridiculous.
It is definitely Boy Meets World at its Boy Meets World.
Was this like a Super Bowl episode? Like, why do they have these random special guests on this? Like,
that's a very
random
good. We should
end
look
of
into this, because why is it?
Was it sweeps?
I don't know.
May sweeps at the end of the season?
I mean, it could be. This is.
But in all fairness, we're saying that as if there were high-profile celebrities. And don't get me wrong, Yasmin Bleeth, which we'll get to, high profile. Robert Goulet, ever high profile?
At some point in time, I guess.
I only know him from the Will Ferrell SNL sketches, to be honest. But we also are introduced to Frankie's dad, which I also
We are, and well, I have a little bit of problem with that, because with that, there's a little inconsistency. Frankie's
Takino.
Frankie's I don't know why.
Stakino. Is
Right.
that right? Was that
Yeah.
Stakino?
Frankie Stakino. I don't know why, but either way, he's supposed to be Frankie Stakino Sr., and yet Feeney calls him Leslie.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if he's senior,
Does that mean Frankie Jr. is also Leslie?
yeah, I was like, where do you get Leslie from? Is his middle name Leslie? There's just nothing there. There's nothing that says why Leslie is the one that
Yeah, that's interesting.
Feeney goes into, or was like Frankie something he made up. I just wanted to know a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, and we also see more of the genie powers of Griff in this episode.
Yes, we do. All right.
And,
So we're kind of doing this ahead of ourselves. So let's get into the roll call, which is what we were getting into.
Roll call.
So we already did kind of the celebrities who pop up, who are Yasmin Bleeth, which, again, height of Baywatch. And one of the things that I wanted to say with that is she comes into it and she's like, Griff, how did you get me here? And then he goes like this and he makes out with her. And I was like, all right, so how old is Griff? We need to have a conversation.
No, it doesn't matter how old he is. He is a student in high school. and maybe I'm wrong on this, but was there ever a time where an 18-year-old high school student was fair game?
I don't know. Maybe. It must have been at some point in time.
Yasmin Bleeth, the
Yes.
star of Baywatch, has decided to come to Philadelphia all for a high school kid.
And what I did like about it is it's even kind of shown that, like, again, we're writing from the male perspective, clearly. But when Eric shows up, same thing. She like sits, or he sits next to her, and she just kind of looks at Eric, and you're like, so is she just into 18-year-old boys? Is that what we're writing here?
Can you imagine being a celebrity and having a high school kid be like, hey, can you make an appearance at John Adams High School in Philadelphia on this Tuesday night tomorrow?
By the way, I just looked it up on the off chance. Adam Scott is, in fact, he was born in 1973. Yasmin Bleeth was born in 1968. So there is a 5-year difference. So even on the off chance that he was 18, she would have been 23.
I guess that's all right.
No, 23-year-old going back to, if you told me think about it. An 23-year-old showing up to an 18-year-old's anything.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's outside of that 4-year range.
Yeah, and also, too, like, I know 18 is legal, but to me, it just seems like, why flirt with that line? Like, yeah. I feel like you only flirt with that line if you want to flirt with that line. You know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying. Which is why I was like, so what are you trying to say with this? That was my whole thing. It's like, are we saying that she's, like, into... This is written from a male perspective, so...
Sure, yeah.
And this is him as... Then we get Vader, of course.
Who is an actual wrestler.
Actual wrestler from WCW.
Well, yeah, and I think he was on WWF a few times back when it was WWF.
He actually also did a guest star appearance on Baywatch.
I wonder if that connection was from
Yeah,
Women's World.
It's very interesting. But yeah, so like Vader.
There's a ton of wrestling references that go throughout the series, and I really think the boys were just a fan of wrestling, and the writers were
also, I'm not
good.
gonna lie, wrestling was a huge thing at that
Yeah,
time. It was literally one of the biggest things.
You remember that time, like, and I guess it was towards the end of the '90s, where, like, Stone Cold and Rock and all of them were really in there. And they were like, America's new favorite pastime was wrestling. Like, that was like a thing that people were saying for like a while. Because baseball was kind of falling out of popularity.
Baseball was falling. Football wasn't what it is now.
But there was a time where wrestling was at such a height that people were like, this is like...
It was at a height.
Yeah.
If we're going to be just blank, John Cena and The Rock, their fame is purely off wrestling.
Oh, 100%.
And name another side sport like that where it provided us with characters like this.
Well, yeah, there's just so much theater in
a lot
wrestling.
of theater.
So it's a perfect transition. Like, I was never surprised that The Rock went in the movies because I remember watching him as a wrestler.
So I'm not going to lie, I never got the appeal of it until I watched that Netflix show Glow.
Oh, really?
And they showed the link of it being a male soap opera.
You know what's funny is that I was never into wrestling until I saw Rock back before he was anything, because I was like, this guy is hilarious. And it was just his character, and I knew it was
Oh
a
no,
character.
yeah, his character is.
But I was just like, as a character, I'm gravitating towards this so much, and that's what got me into it. And I spent like 5 years between like 97 to like maybe 2000, whatever. Into the wrestling world. It wasn't like a lifetime thing for me, but when it was at its height, I was there.
I would say that's when it was at its
I
height.
paid for WrestleMania on pay-per-view. Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, I know people right now
WrestleMania-
who still do like WrestleMania parties.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a big thing. And I don't have a problem with it because ever since I learned that connection of this is a soap opera and they're villains and it's like these lineages, and you can come back at any point in time, and you're like, so-and-so's in the ring, and you're like, oh my god, we haven't seen him since season 2. It's crazy. But yeah, I think after hearing that, it made more sense to me. And before that, I was like,
sure.
Especially since at the time, it was like, everyone knows wrestling's
Yeah.
fake. And I will say that in the beginning, I didn't know it was fake when I was younger. But when I found out it was fake, it definitely lost a lot of its luster for me.
Yeah, I think I was just kind of, I was bedazzled by it for a while, but it's hard to kind of understand whether the decision to incorporate wrestling into the show was, again, something that was just popular or something that the boys seemed really into. But either way,
I think it was popular. I would say that it's probably only there because of the fact that it was something that they knew we would all identify.
If that's the case, could they not get a more popular wrestler?
Probably not. I mean, also, I was like, let's if we're being honest, it's just like they did what they could, and there was a problem.
How many calls did they make before it was like Robert Goulet is who we have available, guys?
Yeah, but I will say, because also, as I mentioned earlier, watching Creed, you're like, why wasn't this a boxing match? Because if we're being honest,
Alan was a boxer. He could have helped.
Alan was the moment that Alan was like, "Oh, I used to be a boxer." When you look at the ring, it's a wrestling ring, but it's also way more of a boxing would make more sense.
But I guess high schools don't have boxing teams, do they?
No, I'm talking about after. This was after.
Yeah.
This is like the wrestling match is one thing, but for him to challenge him to a no rules, like, and I'm gonna prove myself to you. It would make way more sense for this to be an actual boxing match.
Are we allowed to get to this wrestling thing, or are we waiting to get there? Because I definitely have some issues with it.
Well, before we do that, we're gonna finish our roll call.
Okay, good.
So on the roll call, we have the jocks, which I'm gonna treat as a unit to introduce, but clearly we're gonna talk about.
One of those jocks adjacent, I should say, who I'm sure you're going to mention, is Kelly Packard's performance of Candy.
Yeah, exactly.
Kelly Packard has already made an appearance on the show. I believe she was one of the girls that Eric had a double date with at one point or something. She's also was on Baywatch, which is funny that she's in this, and she was also ended up on Baywatch.
It's the 90s. You just go back and forth from show to show.
Her character is probably the most interesting of the
episode.
We're
getting there. So we get the 3 jocks that we meet are Matt, Savage, and Candy.
Savage is a very interesting name.
Savage, considering that Savage is the
surname of Ben?
Well, there's that. I was going to talk about the fact that, that's really good. I was more so the fact that he is a person of color named Savage.
Oh. We almost
have one.
We almost have. With all of our talk about excluding women for this storyline, no one has been more excluded than people of color from It really is so sad.
But his name is Savage.
Yeah.
And I was like,
well, and
that's probably not a...
I have to say, upon looking at him, he's a person of color, but barely.
I mean, he is.
He's a person of color the way that, Shaven Drake is a person of color.
I will tell you this. If the cops showed up, who would they talk to?
Savage.
Exactly. That's when you come out with your real name. I'm Benjamin.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Savage, Matt, and Candy. And yeah, I specifically wanted to do them as a group. But Candy is the one we need to talk about.
Yeah, Candy is so interesting because Candy is basically
She comes with the jacket.
she comes with the jacket. So this opening scene of the show is wrestlers basically picking people up, trying to find someone who fits in the weight class. Which
We
is
have
such
an
an
emptiness in the
interesting-
weight class, and so they're literally just weighing them.
Savage is picking people up and doing just guesses. Picks up Cory. He fits the weight class. They give him the jacket. They're like, also, here's your uniform. Also, here's your candy.
Yes.
Your candy, as
Yes.
in possession.
Yes.
Ooh, Candy. And then a girl walks up and says, hi, I'm Candy.
And he goes, sweet.
Yeah. And it's just this thing of just like, what agency does Candy have in all of this?
Well, I mean, I will say that the Candy character as a character is interesting, an interesting exploration, because she's not this doting girlfriend. She's not like she has her own autonomy in the circle. It seems. She seems like a very tomboy, bro-y. She's like into the jock culture, and not as just like a girlfriend.
Yeah, she's definitely not a cheerleader. I will say
Yes.
that. And that's what kind of makes me wonder, like, what role does she really play?
But the mere fact that I will say, I do not like the fact that she comes with the jacket.
And when the jacket goes, she goes.
She's like, oh, I go with the jacket. You didn't.
Which
and
is
it's
such
like,
an interesting...
No, it's just more 90s nonsense of like this masculine, oh, you get the jacket and you get a girl. And it'd be different if she was attracted to the jacket, which isn't better. Which isn't great, but it is better in the sense that, all right, she sees this dude with power and she went after it. Again, not a great lesson, but it's way better than she is another possession that comes along with the uniform and the jacket.
Yeah, totally.
And I saw that, I was like, this is fucked up.
Yeah, and it really doesn't get any better as the show goes on, this episode specifically. Topanga's back, though, so there's
Topanga
that.
is
There's
back.
a balance
But
there.
we've talked about this. Whenever if Topanga's there and there's another female, Topanga is wholesome and like...
And hardly there.
Well, she's wholesome and hardly there. She's hardly in the scene, usually. But the other girl is just like trash compared to Topanga.
Yeah.
Almost always. They're never like Topanga and this other girl who's like also living her life and really cool.
Yeah, and when Topanga shows up, it's just such like a, oh wow, this is nice again. This is nice to have a female character I can root for.
Yeah, exactly. Very much so.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. Candy's also, she's part of the team that Cory joins that we're against.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like she's also the villain in the story.
One of the things I noticed was that Cory's voice was going through some puberty changes,
Yes,
like
Cory's
cracking
He's starting to
and
change.
getting deeper. He is really going through some puberty on screen, which it's probably so awkward for the actors to go back and watch these parts of the series. Because I feel like you at this age is the most awkward you've ever felt.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's also interesting because we were talking about it earlier. In the beginning of the season, they're different people. They have different heights, they have different looks, and like all these other things. And Ben Savage is starting to get older, and his voice is starting to change.
He has a
Topanga-
sweet afro.
Yeah, it's a very, you can see them all age.
Yeah.
And it makes sense that we're starting to explore these things, or at least
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
And it's also really funny when you realize that Cory is the one they choose for a weight class, knowing that Ben Savage ends up being taller and heavier than
Sean.
Ryder.
Yeah. But yeah, just that was just one of the interesting things. To be honest, you know what? If we're just talking first impressions, I have to be honest. I thought this episode was kind of silly.
It was silly.
The whole Cory trying to find his place, I'm done with that story.
That's what I said. When I was like, again,
Yeah.
Cory's like, I need to make a name for myself. By the way, you've done this 4 times. If
Yeah.
anything, you're known as the kid who's constantly trying to make a name for himself.
Yeah, and it just comes off as just really desperate, and I feel like at the beginning of the season, I was kind of more rooting for him in these endeavors, whereas now I'm just like, dude, just be yourself.
And because A, we know that that's the best version of you.
Yeah.
And then B, I don't think there's anything wrong with exploring different things, because if the motivation was, and they had it right there, Cory didn't try out for the wrestling team.
Sure, it came to him.
They literally picked him up and were like, hey, you made the team because you fit the weight class.
Yeah.
But he immediately joins and he's like becoming, or he's trying to be very jock and bro-y and like,
Yeah.
Again, all these things I think are great, but it's just not the same thing as writing someone who's trying to explore themselves and really figure out what that is. Cory's just kind of adopted this persona.
It would have been better, I think, if maybe Cory had seen Alan relating to Eric with sports or something like that, watching wrestling, watching
Absolutely.
boxing, and then just kind of felt like he wanted to connect in that way. Like, that would have been more authentic than, oh, he weighs about this.
He weighs the thing. And even later on when like Joey, they're like, oh, someone else is in your weight class, which I will say that little bit where he thought it was Frankie.
Oh,
He's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
How wide is this
This
range?
Which also had me asking, like, how intimidating is Joey really? Is he not just the guy who introduces Frankie?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what role does he really play to be menacing?
He's the hype man. He's
Yeah,
the hype man
because
for
Cory
Frankie and
was not afraid to go against Joey. In fact, pinned Joey on his first time.
I will say that the wrestling match was decent. Like
Yeah.
I thought that was going to be like the whole thing. No, Cory actually knew what he was doing.
Yeah.
He earned his spot on the team. I thought that was that's actually very. But again, it's like they kind of sideswipe all of that. You're like, no, Cory just.
Why the hell are they looking for someone to fill this team that they openly admit they have no one to fight in
That's
this
what
weight
I
class?
was thinking about. I thought the exact same thing.
It would have been way bigger if they're like, hey, we're going against a team, they have someone, and we need someone.
Or even if they explain that in order for us to compete ourselves, we have to have someone.
Sure,
in every class.
some value to it
Yeah.
other than just giving him the jacket, rawing, and roar. Yeah. It's really interesting.
It's funny how he adapts to that.
Yeah,
job
100%.
persona.
If the moment he puts the jacket on, when Cory becomes the Cory,
That's also funny. The
um,
nickname needs some work.
the moment that he became, I was like, oh, he's gonna start being a little douchey.
Yeah.
And I mean, to Topanga when she's asking for the yearbook quote, which, by the way, bless Topanga, because she overlooks a lot of Cory's bullshit. We've
Yes.
talked about this before.
Yes.
She must have such a next level crush on him
Yes.
because
Well, that's what I like about
yeah.
we get a little bit of fun between Sean and Topanga, which is fun because we don't
See
really
them
get
guy-
to see
yeah.
them do much. And this is the first time we kind of get. Is it the first time? It feels like the first time.
If not, it's one of the first
One
times,
of the very
for sure.
first times that we get to see Topanga and Sean have this dynamic about Cory. And this whole thing is where Sean's like, oh,
Hey, Topanga, you wanted to ask me some more questions for the yearbook?
Yeah. Where do you think Cory's gonna end up in 10 years?
You mean me, don't you?
That's what I said.
No, you said Cory.
I did not.
You like him.
I do not. You say that again, I will kill you.
and that was like a really fun thing.
Sure.
And then later on, you like him.
Well, and I mean, we as an audience have known that Topanga's like
Yeah.
Cory. I mean, she openly said it in the
Yeah,
episode where
where
he
he was
had
sick, yeah.
mono. But yeah, it's fun to see Boy Meets World kind of playing with that a little bit more. I wish we saw a little more of that and less of this other bullshit.
Yeah.
But whatever, it's all part of it.
So, speaking of other bullshit, picking up where we left off with Feeny and Griff.
Yeah, so I
This
mean,
is another one where I say this episode, to me, echoes the fact that they needed an antagonist for Feeny.
yeah,
And Turner and Feeny, they're just too buddy-buddy right now.
yeah,
They needed someone who could challenge Feeny.
because
in an
Harley
actual
never
way.
challenged him that way.
Yeah, Harley even backs down. He would have backed down immediately.
yeah.
Griff does so with an arrogance.
Yeah.
Like, he has an answer. Oh, you want me to be there? Cool, I'll be there. But
Well,
I'm
I'm
going to bring a masseuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Book my masseuse and import lobsters.
This was the
from Maine.
only time she could come. And it was like,
By the way, it's such
goes back to
a
your theory of him having money.
such a Sean Penn Fast Times at Richmond High moment. That have you seen the movie Fast
Yes,
Times
I
when
have.
he orders the pizza
Piccoli,
that comes to
yeah.
class? Yeah, and that's exactly what I thought of when the masseuse showed up. But importing the lobsters was such like wow, yeah. This there's a wealth aspect, but damn, there's a scene later in the episode that I really feel like is more of a magic genie moment because he snaps his fingers and Robert Goulet just appears. And I was like, dude, money can't do that.
I mean, Yes,
He
he can.
snaps his
You're
fing-
new to LA, so
No.
you don't know that.
He snaps his fingers, the lights dim, a voice over the announcement says, "Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Goulet," and he comes out with a full PA system
Again,
and lights.
I'm saying that you don't know this yet, but money can definitely, in fact, make all those things happen.
All right.
Because here's how I see it. He had already gotten him. He convinced him to come, and Griff was just like, "Wait for my signal. When I do X, Y, Z, you'll turn down the lights. We'll make it a grand entrance type thing." And it seems like genie magic because we're not used to that kind of access. But I've seen that kind of access to money, and it's very, very possible.
Yeah, there was just multiple times in this episode that I thought Griff was just really more outrageous and unbelievable. Like, there was a lot of moments in this episode where I was like, what show is this? I don't believe anything that's going on.
Explain to me. Tell me what you're talking about. Because I think
I'm talking mostly about the last wrestling scene.
Oh, yeah. The last wrestling scene doesn't really make sense, but it's also kind of fun because of... it's TV magic at that point in time. Like the fact that they're selling tickets outside, $50
to high school kids. See a chump get pounded or whatever.
It's like printed on the ticket.
Yeah.
That is, again, that's TV magic. It's sitcom nonsense. It's kind of like when Elvis showed up to Alan's poker game, and you're like, what world is this that we're in?
Yeah, there was just... Honestly, this episode is filled with moments like that, and I think that's the reason why I didn't really relate to this episode very strongly, because the entire time I was just questioning what was real, what wasn't, what felt genuine to the series, and what was all this extra stuff that was being thrown in for what I can only assume was a May sweeps.
Yeah, it is towards the end of the season, so that's very possible. But yeah, it's a weird dynamic, but I think the reasons for it are there, and I think that it's just a way of Griff asserting his power to Feeney. But I like what they do is they show that Feeney has a strength of his own.
Yeah,
you know
Feeney
what I mean?
Doesn't back down at all from Griff, or for really anyone. Even Frankie Stachino Sr., a.k.a.
Vader,
a.k.a. Leslie.
That's what I'm saying. It's like a... Feeney, when you see Feeney get in the ring, you're like, well, you know he's not going to fight, but Feeney takes that challenge.
Well, I mean, Feeney did scare off a burglar in
LA
like a few weeks ago, so, I mean, he definitely has that aura about him. Don't
fuck with Feeney. Yeah. I love that you and I both have that. Yeah, just don't fuck with Feeney.
But yeah, this just, there was just a lot of moments in the episode that just kind of made me question what was happening.
Name a few.
Just that. Like I said, the Robert Goulet, and obviously you're saying a lot of it has to do with wealth, and maybe that's true. But I guess it just seems so foreign to what this series is.
I agree with that.
That's what made me question it more than anything else. So yeah, there was just that's how I felt about Griff in this episode. Is that he seemed like he didn't belong, but I was very entertained by what was happening.
Well, again, and maybe I just kept looking at it through the lens that I was talking about, but I like it because he's clearly trying to... I see every action he takes as a way of asserting his power over Feeney.
Yeah.
And I look at it through that lens, and when you look at it through that lens, it's... there's motivation behind it. Because it's like, why else would he be invested?
Yeah.
Why else... even when he has, he's the one who comes up with the idea that it's going to be on school ground.
Yeah.
100%. And again, it's like there's no reason for it to be there. He goes, you need neutral territory.
Yeah.
Like, say, the gym.
Which I have keys to. I stole keys from the school janitor.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, no, you did this particularly to get on Feeney's nerves.
He had the keys before the fight was set.
That's what I'm saying. He did this to get on Feeney's nerves.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's why, to me... I find his character in this episode more interesting, but that's all with the context of the...
Even though he's a student who makes out with an adult.
Oh, yeah. Again, Yasmin. But he's been doing this. He did it last week with Miss Gale.
Still not
And
on
again,
board
I
with
don't understand why they keep... We talked about this. Adam Scott is supposed to be, or Griff is supposed to be hot. But he is not make out with everyone hot.
Yeah.
We don't even have Turner macking on every person he comes across.
Sure, you're right. You're right. And you also mentioned this in the last episode, which I definitely agree with. You know, I know him best as playing Ben from Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And he's such a nerd on
Yeah.
that show. But to see him just ooze cool.
I mean, he does he
does a great job of it.
He does cool on The Good Place.
Yeah.
He's
Okay.
you know, without spoiling anything, but like he's on The Good Place, and he does that. It's kind of the same kind of schwarmy.
And if you watch Parks and Rec at all, timeline-wise, this still leaves time for him to move to Minnesota and start Icetown.
It really does. It
So,
really does.
guys,
So,
he had the money, he had the capital to build Icetown.
You're not wrong. He would change his name because
100% had to.
But so let's talk a little bit more about who Cory is when he puts on this uniform, which I have to say, or he gets the jacket. Because first of all, he is thrilled with the jacket alone. The jacket is historically a status symbol.
Sure.
I still feel that, I was going to say I feel like it's a little derived from the 80s whole thing.
100%.
But I think at this point in time, it's still a vein. So like get a Letterman jacket means something. But I was going to talk about the fact that when I played football for Osceola for literally one game, there was a power to the jersey.
Yeah.
There is something about walking around in a football jersey when your school, or I would assume any sports uniform, when your school is in fact invested in that sport, that it is a different power. Yeah. And for me, I kind of rejected it because I realized that it has nothing to do with you. They're only into the uniform. But for some people, the admiration alone is worth it.
It would have been interesting to see how that power changed Cory's life in other ways than him becoming friends with those bros and Candy. Like, it would have been interesting if, like, someone was like, hey, you don't have to worry about your homework. Or, hey, you don't have to, worry about coming to whatever you have wrestling practice. Like, some other way to where it literally gave him this, like, superhuman power that we all kind of recognize from the Letterman jacket.
Which is, like, a real thing in real life. But you're right, in this particular episode, they don't really go down that road. And I think maybe it's because it's Feeney's school. So, like, outside of the secretaries who are making out with the students.
Which, gosh, dude.
Outside of that, everyone else is just, they're not going to let someone get by on the fact that they're wearing a jacket. Yeah. Because Feeney wouldn't stand for that.
Yeah.
So.
There's a really interesting moment where Cory's, like, super excited that he made the wrestling team. He's asking his parents to sign a permission slip. And Amy is concerned.
Yep.
Alan, we should discuss this. Wrestling is dangerous.
Oh, come on. If you're signing up for ballet, that might be dangerous. Here.
This is not the first time we've heard Alan make statements.
Oh, is Alan slightly homophobic?
Yeah. I mean, this was one of those moments again where I'm just like, why was that even...
It wasn't necessary.
It was not necessary.
You did not need to put it in there. It didn't aid the story. Later on, he wasn't in ballet shorts. It had no reference.
You know what I think it is? I think that because Alan is symbolic of another generation, I think when I see things like that, I would think of something that maybe my dad would say, or someone that, like, of that age group would say at that point in time. You know, you have to remember, like, Alan probably grew up watching shows like All in the Family. Yeah, and just things like that where that was just a little bit more PC. So I understand for the time, whatever. But, like, to your point, it does not add anything to the storyline. It's not even a funny joke.
No, it's not. So it's just like but it'd be different. It would be different if he caught Cory talking about his tights. Yeah. Or something. You know, it's like that would make difference. That would have a place in it. You just kind of said out of nowhere, at least he's not in ballet. And it's just like and if he was, would that make him any less of a man? Cory of all people?
And again, I think the better version of the story, as we've discussed, is this being boxing and Alan relating to Cory through boxing. And having some kind of episode.
That's right there, by the way.
Yeah, it's right there. And, like, we've kind of... Alan played such a huge part in Cory's life in the first season. He's almost non-existent in his life in the second season. Why not have an episode
I definitely think this episode could have used... Like, it's not that it's a terrible episode. It's a good for what it is episode, but
if Griff had never been introduced, this would have been a different episode.
you think so?
I think that if Griff had never been introduced, if Harley had never changed out, they would have probably done more with Alan. Because Griff takes up such a majority of both last episode and this episode's storyline.
Which is weird.
Because he disappears.
Why did we put this much investment? Again, Topanga's back. Let's talk about Topanga and the feelings and the struggles of her liking this boy that we've known that she's liked forever.
I'm way more interested in that.
Yeah, that's way more interesting. That's
well,
way
and
more
also
dynamic.
it just plays a bigger part in the overall story that they're trying to tell with these characters. I mean, we literally just talked about this with the last episode of them building up these side characters. Griff, I don't care.
Yeah.
Even though I'm very entertained.
Oh yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both of those things. I just think you've brought up a very good point about this particular episode, which is that the time that we spend on Griff or even the wrestling match itself doesn't make sense. And why? Now that I think about it, why, if we're in this universe, why is Turner and Feeney there and not Amy and Alan?
Oh, at the wrestling match?
Yeah.
Yeah, Amy and Alan knew about it.
I mean, like, well, they knew about it, but they didn't know it would be like this whole thing. I'm talking about like the after, because they signed up for the one at school. They don't know about because Cory was even surprised that Eric was there.
Yeah,
but that fits. Eric showing up makes sense.
Sure.
He would know what's going on in school. But the fact that Mr. Feeney and Mr. Turner heard what was going on and did not immediately call Alan and Amy to get down there.
I would say maybe Feeney was at school. He called Turner because he heard
after
some
hours,
commotion.
it said.
Heard some commotion. Yeah, maybe he was there grading papers, doing some kind of
all right,
work.
We'll give it that.
And called Turner just to see what was going on and happened to stumble across this thing. Maybe that's the case. But the point is we don't get any context for any of it.
No, we don't. We get no context for it. And to even... like, to make a lot of... there's no real reason for Turner to be there. Like, Turner...
There's no reason for Turner to be in this episode.
No, he even does that little side thing where Cory and him have that moment where he's like, sidebar.
Cory's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. But he was like, I thought you said you wouldn't have to fight or anything like this. And he's like, yeah, but what was the purpose of that?
Yeah.
Especially since he's already in the ring. Yeah. You know what I mean?
This wrestling match has tag team.
Yes!
And at one point, Vader, a professional adult wrestler,
Thank you,
is in the ring with Eric, who is a child student, about to have a physical altercation.
He literally has already lifted Eric up.
This was part of those moments where I was like, what is this show now?
Yes.
Because how is a group of children cheering on an adult beating up a child? What is happening?
This is the 90s. We were literally willing to let anything happen.
Yeah, and like, at a certain point, I was like, Joey is in the ring with Cory for all of, like, 30 seconds. Yep. Immediately,
I have to say that, again, to their credit, Cory holds his own.
He does.
Very often, we see Cory, like, run away from a fight or, like, all this other stuff. Cory immediately adapts.
Granted, he did try to get out of the fight a bunch of times, but once the bell rang, he was in there.
He adapted, and Cory's, like, on the ropes, and he's, like, ready. He is wrestling in a wrestling match. This is the second time we see him do it. He is successful when it's him against someone his own weight class, which, if for the sport itself, only makes sense. Yeah. It would be different if, like, Cory challenged Frankie or, like...
Well, what's funny is that Cory was okay to challenge Joey. Joey said, I'm going to tag Frankie into this.
Exactly.
At which point I was like, so what is the point of this whole thing really? Because if it was for Joey to stand up for himself, he immediately tagged out. And he got beat up by Cory, kind of.
Yeah.
So why is this even a thing now?
Yeah.
Is it only so Griff can sell tickets and get money? Is this not just the white man profiting?
Oh, absolutely. Well, speaking of, thank you so much. Because what I loved about this episode is when earlier on in the episode, we have one of my white boy logic moments, which I loved, which is Cory is like, we have made no names for ourselves. Do you know why that is? And Sean's like, is it because of you? And he's like, no, why would I take
why would I take ownership? No, I blame the jocks.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, it's a perfect that little moment to me was like, that is my bruh moment of this episode, outside of the candy thing, which is like a larger one. But when Cory was just like, no, why would I take ownership of my own actions?
Yeah.
I'm gonna blame those guys.
Was Topanga at the fight?
No, she wasn't, and I liked that. At least if she is there, which I don't think she was, they don't make a moment of it. They make a moment of everyone else being there.
I kind of wish, like, you said you had to watch Creed, and kind of traditionally in boxing movies, there's always that boxer's girlfriend or whatever. It would have been nice to have Topanga there, be worried about Cory, have someone just...
This would have been, again, I think the boxing thing would have been... Rocky has been out at this point in time.
Yeah.
So,
Philadelphia!
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Come on!
Like, it would have... It's actually called the Thrilla and Philla.
Yeah.
Boxing only makes sense for them to do.
Yeah.
And I feel like there was a very big missed opportunity to do a Rocky homage, have Alan and Cory have a moment, actually make sense of Cory trying to explore being, because there's nothing wrong with exploring being a wrestler.
But by the way, in that last scene, I don't think anyone does a legal wrestling move.
Yeah.
Like, everyone is doing outrageous
like,
television moves.
Absolutely.
One thing I really do love about this episode that I did remember from the moment the episode started was when Topanga was going around getting yearbook quotes. And I remembered her yearbook quote.
Oh, I didn't. I
always remembered that yearbook quote.
That is a great yearbook
It's a great yearbook quote, and it's one of those things that just stuck with me forever. And because, like, this episode, I was like, oh, this is the quote episode. Like, that's how I remembered this episode. None of this other shit plays a part in the legacy of Boy Meets World. But that moment, to me, is like, oh, that was special. Because I feel like it was like, that was the moment I've been waiting for Topanga to have something to get to the show forever. And the moment that happens, I'm like, this is what's missing from this show, is, like, heart.
Yeah.
There's so much humor. There's so much... like, fantastical things going on right now. Where is the heart of this show?
I didn't think about it until just now, but maybe that's why we've been talking about what we've been talking about lately with this show, which is like, what is this? What's going on?
Yeah.
And it's missing that heart that Boy Meets World does so well, and they know how to play up so well. So when Cory and Topanga have that moment, he's like, well, what did you put? She says what she says, and they just... they put a bow on it. It's like, this is what you're supposed to take away from it. It wasn't that moment special, and you're like, it was great, it was grounded, it made sense, and yet you were able to do all of that in like 60 seconds.
Paragraph. It really was not much.
And yet everything else, and we're like, can you imagine what you would have done with 20 whole minutes?
And it's so funny because her quote specifically talks about how, like, you know, if in the end we end up together, it's beautiful. And I was really reminiscent of this episode of The Wonder Years with Fred Savage, because there's this scene where he basically, like, he goes to Wendy, Wendy, his crush. And Wonder Years was amazing with soundtrack music. And Diana Ross, the Supremes' Someday We'll Be Together plays. And it was one of those moments I was like, oh, this is a really beautiful, touching moment. And it was very reminiscent. I got the same kind of vibes of this. And I was like, this is the kind of, like, that I want from my Savage-based television. Is I want the heart, because... as funny as Ben can be, and as humorous as they've made his character, I like him so much more when he's sincere.
Well, I think...
Or when there's a balance,
I think Boy Meets World wins when it's both comedic and it has heart.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, and then there were Shauna episode.
100%.
That, while that is hilarious, and it has, like, goof after goof, and is so iconic, what ties it together and what actually makes it a great episode is when it ends and you find out the motivation behind it and everything else. It's like, that is something where you're like, wow, you brought this really nonsense storyline down to earth, and you made it make sense, and you gave it heart. And Boy Meets World is a series that our generation remembers because of the heart.
Yeah.
We may quote as much as we need to quote the goose and remember the you're supposed to they want you to take the roles. Yeah. Like, all of those funny moments are iconic, but we remember the heart
Yeah.
Our generation remembers the Cory and Topanga love story. We remember the Feeney lessons. We remember, and I think that's what's really important.
And I don't know if you remember this, but kind of at the beginning of our podcast, I remember saying in so many words, like, the first 2 seasons were all right.
Yeah.
And it was because, and obviously I have a stronger understanding of that now, it's the lack of that.
Yes.
And that is really the magic that makes Boy Meets World, I think, live on so much longer than a lot of the other shows of the era, is that heart that I didn't find particularly engaging in a Family Matters or Full House episode. This seems so much more sincere when they get it right.
Yes, I'll agree with that. Like, it doesn't come off, when they do it right, it doesn't come off Saturday after school special.
Yeah.
And very often when Family Matters or Full House would get
Saved by the
serious
Bell,
or Saved by, it felt so after school special. Whereas this, when Boy Meets World does it right, you're just left being like, wow. You're amazed. You're not over it.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that they do it in such a way that we are actually, as children watching the show, able to learn these lessons from them.
Yeah.
Thus, that's the connection that we now have with these characters forever. They helped us understand the world better.
Exactly.
Because we learned from them. The characters on these other shows who don't really develop as deeply, we can't learn as much as from them. Their lessons seem apparent. Whenever I see Full House and, like, DJ's crying because someone was mean to her at school, that doesn't really have the same appeal to me as...
Well, it also, for the most part, Boy Meets World does feel like someone growing up. Therefore, it has consequences. It has continuality.
Yeah,
you know, it's like there's this thing where it's like you can see them build off of the lessons they've learned previously, whereas step by step, Full House, Family Matters, people would go through stuff, but it didn't really have
the lasting
impact. Whereas Boy Meets World, for as chaotic and crazy as it does, one thing you can actually see is you can see them learn from their mistakes.
Or, like, I mean, they do it in a way like, for example, Boy Meets World has an episode later on with drinking that happens after Cory and Topanga, like, have a big breakup.
Yeah.
When I think about how Boy Meets World handles drinking, and I think about that episode of Family Matters where Urkel gets drunk and tight walks on a rope, it's just, that's the kind of extremes that I'm referring to. Like, something that's grounded, something that's more familiar versus something that I'm like...
realistic.
Yeah, just realistic. Like, this
this is a breakup. Alcohol is available. You know, you've seen other people use alcohol as a solution to their problems.
For heartache, yeah.
So why would you not naturally do that and want to explore that territory and the dangers of that territory?
Urkel getting drunk and jumping off of a roof is so extreme and not realistic at all that it's just a parody. Like, and I know for those listening, it seems like we're kind of going all over the place, but that's because this episode was all over the place.
So I was actually going to say just that. I was like, this episode, as much as we just talked about the way that Boy Meets World does it well, this episode is another one that you and I feel, when we really look back on this podcast, what we're really doing is creating fan theories that make this show make sense.
Try to make it work because...
Or just finding other alternatives to, like, how to do this episode in the way that fits the Boy Meets World formula.
Yeah.
Because this episode has potential in it. We've just thought of 2 or 3 different ways that this episode would be great.
And I would really hope that, like, if the creators were to, like, hypothetically, in hindsight, after looking at the whole series, was able to go back and rewrite some episodes, they would do things a little differently to add continuality and to add depth and to add...
I'm sure there has to be some... I feel like that's, if that's not a screenwriting practice, I definitely feel like that should be, of just like find an old TV series that you like and write a spec on that episode.
Well, that's how you get that's how you get writing jobs, is writing spec scripts.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Donald Glover wrote a spec script for The Simpsons. That's how he got 30 Rock.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying is I assume that there has to be one where you just go back and you do a spec for an episode that already exists.
Yeah.
Like, make this episode better.
Sure.
And if not, I feel like it should be.
Yeah, that's a great screenwriting exercise, yeah.
Exactly. Because I just feel like it's completely possible to get your same moments and get your wackiness and all this other stuff, but bring it. I mean, we know that it's possible because Boy Meets World does it.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so frustrating is that when they get it right, it's so right, but when they get it wrong, it's off by just this much, and that's what's so frustrating.
You're right. It's just like, you'll look at it and they'll acknowledge. They're like, when Alan's like, oh yeah, I used to box in the Navy. You're like, yeah. You're like, all right, continue. You have it right there. You mentioned it. You remembered. Why is he not boxing?
Yeah. Why is he not helping Cory with any of this?
Exactly. That's what I think is the real thing. Especially, like I said, when they show up to the ring later and it's Mr. Feeney and Mr. Turner. When they do that, I am like, why is Alan and Amy not there?
Yeah. You know what? I don't really have much else to say about this episode. I was just looking through my notes just to see. Yeah, Oh, the one note that I have was that Vader was a former student of Feeney's. So does that say that Feeney once taught high school before he taught elementary school? Because he says you were much scarier with acne, implying that he was a teenager.
That is true. I would think so. That would make sense.
Yeah.
And that would also explain how Feeney was able to jump back. Remember how we were like, so you're going to tell me that this elementary teacher just got this job as a principal of all things. But I think it actually makes a lot more sense now if you consider the fact that Feeney, which we know, has a history.
I wonder if he was a high school teacher. After the death of his wife, he wanted to calm down, teach elementary school for a little while. Yo, guys.
Actually,
Feeney's story is so good, and we're ignoring it at every turn.
But this is what I'm talking about. You and I come up with like the greatest theories as to why we keep trying to make it all work and link. And guys, I think we do a great job, personally.
Michael Jacobs, call us up. We got ideas.
All right. So on that, do you have a lesson or anything that you want to take away from it? What's your Feeney taught me is what I'm saying.
You are you, I am I. You do your thing, I do mine. If in the end we end up together, it's beautiful. That's the only thing worth taking away from this episode.
I will agree with that. I think it's fantastic. And again, it's a lot of... We get this kind of moment from Sean. It's kind of almost a throwaway line. But when Cory hands back the... the uniform, he's like, I don't need this. Matt's like, you know what? You're all right. And Sean's like, he always was.
Yeah.
And like, again, it's like a throwaway little scene, but it's like, no, I love that even Sean and Topanga, to be fair, they don't really overreact to Cory. Like, they disagree with it. But they know that Cory needs to do this, and Cory's going to eventually see. I feel like they're even like, oh, you're having an identity crisis again. You know, they're like, all right, so...
I feel like they just kind of understand this is just Cory being Cory, guys.
This is Cory being Cory. He's going to go through it, and... I like that little bit. Yeah. That little bit of continuality of Sean just being a good friend and being like, yeah, he didn't need this. And again, not saying it to Cory, not making this grand speech to Cory and be like, you're so much better than this. Just being like no, Matt, you should know that he's always been this cool of a guy.
Sure. Yeah, that's cool. Bro moment?
I told you I had two, which was Candy going with the jacket in general, which kind of pissed me off. And then also, that little bit, crap. Now I get it. But I mentioned it
my bro moment is the relationship between adults and students, whether it be fighting them or kissing them. I don't think it's appropriate.
It's completely inappropriate. And yeah. All right. So that is it. What grade are you giving this,
dude? As fun as it is to watch these Griff episodes, they just really don't have. It's fast food. It's like it's fun, but it's
so perfect.
It like afterwards, I feel kind of like and it doesn't last.
Fast food.
It's just fast food. So like, give me some quality steak, and I'll give you a greater grade. But as for right now, I'm doing C+ again.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do a C again.
Yeah.
It honestly it is. I was like, there's nothing. We don't even get a shirtless Turner. So
yeah.
So I don't know what you want from me out of this episode.
Exactly.
It's good. It's not great. I think we get a lot of
It's fairly forgettable, I think.
It is. And I honestly think, for the most part, if it wasn't for Vader, which I know is like a really big part, and then the quote that you pulled out, I absolutely forget this episode.
And you know what's funny? When I saw that this episode, like, I kind of vaguely remembered the episode based on the title. And so when I saw that it was coming up, I kind of rolled my eyes at it, and I couldn't understand why. But I think even as a kid, I didn't really care for this episode very much.
It is. I think you put it so perfectly. This is a fast food episode.
Yeah.
It's just like
100%.
completely something to put on the plate.
Yeah.
All right. So, homework. What do you got?
All right. Well, the Soul Train Awards this year are being hosted by Tisha Campbell and
Tashina Arnold.
Yes. So just to give a little throwback to them, I'm going to put out House Party as my homework. House Party to me is just, there's so many few times where like, where like I try to introduce white people to things that black people all know and love. And it doesn't translate. I've tried to show white people Friday a few times.
I tried to show my friend Friday,
and
they just don't get it. And I was like,
because you don't know these characters. You don't know that guy on the block the way we do.
You're right.
And so there's such a disconnect. But I do think House Party is one of those that not only should people watch it, where is my House Party remake? Where is my House Party musical? Like, where is my stage? Like, I need more of this because it's literally just fantastic music, fantastic dancing, and black coolness of its own.
They did a few remakes with Immature.
Well, those were sequels.
The sequels, those were sequels.
Yes.
They were like, they're
and in all fairness, House Party 3 is not great. House Party 4 I don't acknowledge, but House Party 1 and House Party 2, that pajama jam is still on point. But yeah, I mean, House Party 1 has some great performances. Martin Lawrence early on. I don't know. Robin Harris is in that, which I know your younger generation don't know who Robin Harris is. He's an old black comedian who he started Bebe's Kids, if anyone remembers that. He has a hilarious stand-up comedy album, Gone Too Soon, but he's a great influencer in black comedy. You hear a lot of his stuff in D.L. Hughley and some of these other people who really snap at audience members a lot. I can't recommend this movie enough. Please give me a remake. Please give me a stage musical. Lin-Manuel Miranda, help me out here. I need to see this.
Again, I'm always kind of doing this, but I have a friend his entire job is to pitch new musicals, and
I'm telling you, House Party, Soul Food. I would even take a Set It Off musical. Where are you at?
Oh my God, I've been trying to talk about Set It Off. Set It Off is just so good.
It's so good. 4 black lead actresses in a full-on action movie. Shot for $9 million. Feels like 30. Where are you at? Oscar-worthy performances that no one got because melanin.
Yeah.
But, House Party, Set It Off. Those are my homeworks.
All right, I like it. So mine is actually going to be a podcast. Do you know Amanda Seales?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Do you know her podcast? God, it's called Small Doses with Amanda Seales.
Okay.
And it's just, by the way, it's like almost every episode's almost a one-man show with Amanda Seales. And it's just her talking, and she does, each episode's called The Side Effects of blank. The Side Effects of, she just did one called The Side Effects of Toxic Masculinity, The Side Effects of Living on Your Own, The Side Effects of Being an Oreo is one she just did.
Ooh.
And it's the one that I sent you to listen to, Miriam. And it is good.
Yeah.
It is. Also, she grew up in Orlando, Florida.
Really?
She went to Dr. Phillips High
Wow.
School. Yeah.
Okay.
And she talks about the experience of being one of the only black people in school.
Fam.
And, dude, I was like, I feel seen. But, like,
yeah,
she's really funny. She is someone who, her personality is completely different than what I thought it was. And it's really entertaining to listen to her. She knows what she's talking about. She keeps everyone on. She calls out everybody, any and everybody, if it's relative to the topic. And
what's the name of the podcast again?
It's called Small Doses with Amanda Seales.
All right, yeah.
And it's really fun. She's a trip. She's just fun to listen to. You could tell she has like a soundboard or a mixer or whatever. She's constantly playing with. She's one of those podcasters. But I definitely think people should check it out. She's done quite a few that I just think are really interesting, and she picks different topics that, I think it's worth exploring. So that's my homework.
Oh, there was one more I wanted to add, which is the podcast called Why'd You Push This Button? And I thought I had mentioned it before, but I guess I didn't. And what I love about this is that it's a podcast of two women discussing the ethical decisions that social media forces us to make.
Oh my god, I love this already.
So like some of their episode titles are like why did you stalk people on Venmo? Why do you rewatch Instagram stories? Why do you send nudes? Why do you like celebrity photos on Instagram? Why do you turn on red receipts? Like all these things that we are like, should we? How we? Do we? What do we do in this situation? They're talking about it in a way that I've never heard people mention it. And your face right now is so hilarious.
I am so amazed and like I'm so excited that someone's doing this.
Yeah, like
I love social commentary anyway. I love any social science podcast.
Yeah,
and you have just blown my mind.
Like one of the first episodes I listened to was, do you take selfies in public? Because that's something I've always felt awkward about, but it's something that I know everyone does and whatever. And so just kind of getting down to the meat of that, why did you unfollow me? Why did you turn off push notifications? Just these when is it okay to record someone? Why did you leave the group chat? All of these questions that we all have in our daily life that we don't really hear in popular media, I feel is really greatly discussed in this. So why'd you push that button? Hosted by Ashley Carmen and Caitlin Tiffany. It's done by The Verge, Vox Media. It's on wherever podcasts are available, and it's dope as fuck. Check it out.
Yeah, no, all right. So you guys have quite a bit to
so much homework, yeah.
But trust me, it's all worth it if you want to.
Way better than whatever this Boy Meets World episode was.
So on that note, thank you guys for listening to Bro Meets World. Remember, you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, all of the things. Make sure you are reaching out to us on Instagram, and Facebook, and Twitter at Bro Meets World, or email us at bromeetsworld@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Extra Siege. That's XTRACEEJ.
You can find me on Instagram at abraverme, at .braver.me. And you can find me talking about Boy Meets World on this podcast. Y'all know where to find me.
Find me up in the club.
In the club.
Up in the club.
Yeah.
Actually, you can find me practicing my, what is that called? The dance moves from House Party?
Oh, yeah, your Kid and
Play.
Play. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yo,
dude, that's another thing where it's like, have you ever been have you ever been at a club and seen the other black person and they look at you and they're like, Kid and Play? And you're like, we gonna Kid and Play it? And then
see, we live in the same city. There's no reason why we can't get this routine down.
Oh, absolutely. So if y'all catch us doing a Kid and Play, you know.
So yeah, guys, please just dream, try, and do good.
Do the Kid and Play.
Yeah, do the Kid and Play. Later, bros.
Later, bros.